Now, recently there was a report about some of the biggest Democratic donors fleeing the disastrous DNC. I talked about that. I also talked about how some Democratic donors, the big donors, are actually helping Donald Trump in his agenda. It was a great report from The Intercept from Lee Fang, so you should check that out. Now, some of those people that were helping Trump in his agenda were people like Steve Elmendorf and Heather Podesta. Now, they were helping him out on things like bank deregulation, as well as fighting against net neutrality on the side of Ajit Pai, and who's a former Verizon lawyer that doesn't believe that everybody's content on the internet should be treated equally. Wonderful. So you got these Democratic donors that are there. Now, there was one, however, former Clinton donor that says, hey, you know what? I'm not going to work with Trump. I don't like Trump. And I'm going to run from the DNC. But I'm actually going to go a direction where, hey, you know that Bernie guy? He's actually got some good ideas. Interesting. Now, Mike recently talked to billionaire Tom Steyer. Now, he's a California hedge fund billionaire who spent $87 million on Democratic candidates in 2016. And, of course, who gave lots and lots of money to Hillary Clinton. Well, how'd that investment turn out? It actually turned out terribly. Now, he talked to Mike, and basically they talked about where the Democratic Party is going to go from here. And surprisingly, Steyer does not want it going back in the direction of Clintonism. He said, quote, there's an absolute unspoken war between corporate interests and the American people. That's the underlying subtext for all the public discussions within the Democratic Party. And that's actually incredibly true. And that's what we talk about all the time. Are the corporate interests going to win? Currently in the DNC, they have won. Currently, the Democratic moneyed establishment has control of the Democratic Party. That's why so many of the regular people, so many progressives, and so many of the voters have fled. They no longer support the DNC. They're not giving them donations. And so that's why the DNC is practically bankrupt, literally bankrupt, I should say, under Tom Perez, who is just the face of the establishment. He was the guy that was supposed to bring in the donors. And the donors are like, we don't want any part of you because you're a loser. We know the direction you're going. Now, Steyer says, what we're seeing is a deliberate attempt to take away working families' future by really rich people. Now, this is fun because Steyer's a really rich person. He says, until we address that, I don't think we're dealing with the reality Americans are facing today. And actually, he's right. That's exactly what's going on. What we do is what we have is a system right now built on wealth and income inequality. Now, the people that run this system, they think the system is great. Because, hey, Lynn, when we take money from the poor and we give it to ourselves, well, that turns out really great for us. Not so much for the poor people, but we don't really care. Because we're the rich people. And so we're going to push politicians and we're going to push policies that continue to have the wealth flow upward to us. Okay. Now, they also have, these people have the most to lose if someone like a Bernie Sanders or Nina Turner or Tulsi Gabbard upend that system. And that's exactly what they want to do. Now, Steyer, again, he's one of those billionaires, right? But he's one of those people who's like, no, I'm actually going to use my money to fund things like climate change, fighting against climate change. And look, to be fair, just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean that you can't be on the side of the people. I know some people think that every billionaire is bad, but I don't actually agree with that, even though a lot of our problems are coming from billionaires who are billionaires and millionaires who are incredibly greedy and just want to grab all the wealth to themselves. Now, there are people out there who don't want to grab the wealth, all the wealth to themselves, and that's apparently this guy. And if you remember who Nick Hanauer is, he's the guy that says, you should tax me more. Really, I can handle that. Tax me more and do some investment into the people. Give that money to middle class. Yes, do the redistribution from me to less rich people. Trust me, I can handle it. So those are some of the people who are actually starting to get it. Now, he says, and he's got some criticisms for the Democratic Party. He says, the Democrats have yet to develop a compelling and positive message to channel the energy Sanders generated on the campaign and helped the party win back working class voters in the Rust Belt who flipped for Trump, let alone turn their own base out at the polls on Election Day. Now, you have to remember that Bernie Sanders, over 80% of Democrats support him. And unlike what you hear from the corporate media, unlike what you hear from people like Joanne Reed and Clinton supporters, Bernie Sanders is very popular among African Americans and Latinos and women. Much more so than white men. White men, actually, Sanders is weakest with. So that whole thing that, oh, Bernie Sanders is just a white bro, that's all he gets for supporters, that's actually not true. Now, for Steyer, of course, what does that message include? Well, it starts with, he says, inequality and not jobs. Quote, before you freak out on the jobs question, which everyone loves to do, understand that we only have 4.3% unemployment. But what we do have is a whole bunch of people who have jobs they can't live on. So that's a nod to, hey, maybe we should raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour so that people could actually live on that. And that's, of course, a policy priority of progressives. We're in support of a $15 minimum wage because that's a living wage. That's a minimum you need to make to live in most areas. In fact, you know, there is no state in the union right now where you can make or you can make a living. You can actually afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment on $7.25. You just can't do it. That's impossible. You know, you try to calculate the hours. It's a crazy amount of hours. Now, to solve that, he does want to. He's obviously, he seems like he's in support of an increased minimum wage, but he also wants to do more infrastructure spending. That's great. I'm in favor of that. Investing in clean energy, wonderful, and higher pay for contract workers. Now, those are definitely a start. Now, he also says something that I've been saying for a while. He says, quote, Democrats have to move from resistance to offense. Finally somebody gets it. Yes, we have to stop saying, oh, we're not Trump. Look at how bad Trump is. Instead, we have to take the fight to the Republicans. We have to, you know, not literally, but we've got to, through policy and through debate and through our ideas, punch them in the face. Again, I'm not saying literally. I'm just saying we've got to take them on and we've got to be strong. Okay? We have to be incredibly strong. Now, he says that, quote, being not Trump is not nearly enough. We have to put forward our positive vision for the future. If we can't do that, then I don't understand the point. Makes sense. Now, he says, as far as, okay, the Democrats, they need a vision. Well, what kind of vision is he talking about? He says, quote, one of the things people get mad at Bernie about is single payer. You know who's also calling for that? Warren Buffett. We have got to start looking at things with a fresh eye. Interesting. Now, the idea that we're not going to cover people is over. Healthcare is a right. The question is how we deliver it in the most efficient manner possible. So there you have giant Clinton donor saying, no, healthcare is a right. And there's the idea that we're not going to cover people is over. That's it. Gone. No more letting it go where people die because they can't afford healthcare, because they can't afford health insurance. That's done. That's over with. And it's actually very, very refreshing to hear that. So now here's the thing. It's not like we don't have a lot of great examples to look at and to copy from all over the globe. Since we are we're the only advanced industrial nation to not have a universal healthcare system. So we can look at all the 11 countries, right, that have these universal single-payer systems, and we can see what works and we can see what does not work. And we can pick and choose, and we can make a system that works for us, okay? We can do a real analysis of what's going on, the strengths and the weaknesses, and come up with a great single-payer system that covers everybody, and then it does so cheaply and again, covers and makes sure that everybody who needs that health care is taken care of. Okay? Because as Steyer says, single payer is the system elsewhere that is kicking our ass. Well, that's for sure. They're totally kicking our ass. Okay? So, here you have one of the biggest Democratic donors, and this is great, saying, what we're doing right now, it's not working. How about we take a look at the stuff that Bernie Sanders is proposing, and maybe we should actually do it. Now, when that happens, it makes you think that at least some supporters of the party, again, biggest Democratic donor, they might actually be serious about policy reform. I know. I don't necessarily trust it, but it seems like Steyer's been saying things like this for a while now. Even though he didn't actually back Bernie Sanders during the primary, he endorsed Hillary Clinton. Now, the thing is, a majority of not just the base, but the American people, they do want these policies. So wouldn't it make sense as a party that actually wants to win and implement these policies? And look, when you look at Steyer's record of funding climate change action groups, it seems like this guy is serious about fighting against climate change. Like, that's something that he cares about. With the Republicans, you're not going to get any forward momentum on fighting climate change. The Democrats, right now, are one of the biggest vehicles that he could use to do that. So it would make sense that he would want Democrats to win. Well, how do you get Democrats to win? You actually run on popular policy. You actually have a message. So this makes all the sense in the world for someone like Steyer. Okay? Now, finally, he says, finally, look, if he's serious about this, this would be great, okay? If you're serious about doing what's right for the American people, right, and not just protecting the establishment to keep your funding and your jobs, then you would have to be in favor of these policies too, because these policies are what will help the American people. So if he is, and, you know, serious about these policies, and I'm not just doing wishful thinking here, then I will welcome whoever to our side. As long as they're on the right side of policy, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you donated to the Democrats in the past. As long as you're doing the right thing now, that's all we care about. Because that's the way to move forward. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.